Welcome, everyone, to our next monthly sync. Today, we are talking all about the customer journey and why we need to redesign and rethink it now with AI at the core. If you haven't joined before, I'm Tash. I'm VP of Customer Growth at Hook and host of this series. And I'm joined by a wonderful guest today, the esteemed Carlos Granda. Carlos, would you mind giving us a quick introduction?
Of course. First of all, thank you for inviting me. This is exciting. It's a topic that I always love to talk about. But hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Carlos Granda. I live in Southern California, but I've been in the industry for a long, long time. I've spent over 30 years in all levels and all types of customer experience, customer success, leadership roles across different enterprise-sized companies, whether it was Google Cloud or SAP or even Salesforce. In the last 3 years, I've been spending quite a bit of time working closely with private equity firms as well as portfolio companies. And then obviously some great AI startups and AI companies around this wonderful topic, which is customer experience.
Thank you. Well, we're excited to hear from you today, and we know you're bringing a lot of experience to this conversation. For the folks listening in, we've got a lot to cover today. We've got just under 30 minutes. We're going to try and leave some time at the end for questions. So if you do have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A and we'll get through as many as we can before we finish. Carlos, I'm just wondering whether we should start off actually by explaining what you mean by customer journey. Like when we're saying customer journey, what are we referring to?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the traditional way of approaching customer journeys, sort of the traditional way of doing customer journeys has died. I think the whole concept of doing sticky notes and swim lanes and left to right and all these great friction points that happens and handoffs, I think that whole era is dead because typically we did it based on the capacity of humans we had.
Hmm.
Right? We always were trying to figure out, okay, well, if I do something, if I'm the sales rep, I'm going to pass it on to you, and then you need to eventually pass it on to someone else. So it became a very rudimentary way of doing things. So I think that whole concept is dead. So I think of now the customer journey is truly about orchestration, like real time, sort of adapted signal based coordination. And I think I would love for us to get away from serving customers to leveraging the signals, leveraging the data that we have from them and their interactions and their maturity, and then react on it and do something about it. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I think is when I think about a customer journey. The second thing I'll say is that if you ask any company, I would say 99.9% of the companies, they'll say they have a customer journey, but
Mm.
it's not truly a customer journey. It's truly more of an internal facing organizational structure that says my sales team passes into the customer success team and the customer success team goes to the implementation team to support. And so it's a very much more of an organizational design conversation, right? A workflow conversation rather than from a customer lens perspective. What does actually that look like? We sort of missed the part of customer journey, not company
Yeah.
journey, it's customer journey.
Yeah, really good call out. And so, well, we're talking today about redesigning this, about starting again and about thinking about it differently. Why do we need to do that now? What's changed in the last couple of years? Why is this old school thinking died? Why do we need to think differently?
Yeah, so I think the biggest difference, I think, if you look back just a couple of years ago, I mean, the notion of AI. By the way, AI has been around for a long time, so it's not like it's
Yep.
been somewhat new. The agentic AI concept, right? This sort of level of technology and data and speed and computing power is what really has changed. And so the conversation has moved from like, should we do AI? Is that really going to disrupt us to how do we leverage it? How fast can we do it? And the biggest impact. And the things that also has changed is that, if you look back 2, 3 years ago, some of your incumbent products that you use, whether it's in the CRM space and customer success, customer support, or pretty much anywhere across your organization, they really didn't have that level of AI capabilities. But now everybody tells you they have AI capabilities. So as a leader, no matter what role you're in, whether you're in sales or even in post sales, that is an abundant set of data. So it's very difficult to say, okay, what's real, what's not, and how do we actually leverage it, right? It's always the conversation like, do I keep what I have and double down on the products that I have that I've invested, 10, 15 years, configure the way I want to, or do I go and actually buy something new that I put it on top of it? And that's kind of the typical conversation. So the difference is now you have agents that can actually take action.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to decide capacity, it's not just should the sales rep do that? Should this onboarding person do that? Did the renewals person do that? Now you can actually look at agents as a source of can they do that for you faster, cheaper, more efficient based on signals. So kind of moving up the trusted advisor role for a lot of these folks to kind of really spend time on quality rather than some of the administrative stuff.
We talk about this a good bit on the monthly sync with everyone saying they can do AI, right? And that makes things difficult.
Mhm.
It's like everyone says they can sing, but not everyone's Michael Jackson, right?
Absolutely.
Why do you think, if we think about AI and some of the things that you talked about, we've got different companies are adopting AI at different levels. So you've got some folks who are using it to complete bits of tasks, some folks who aren't using it at all, some folks who've rebuilt their entire workflow. Where do you stand on that spectrum? What's your view in terms of how you think about building AI into the customer journey?
Yeah, so I think some companies focus too much on just adding AI as a sort of as a paint on top of this, house that is falling apart, and that they think
Mm,
that actually then creates everything. So I think most journeys were typically designed on human execution and touch points. That's how we've always done it in the past, and even just the way we do journeys today should completely be revamped. Right, the whole concept of current state of how we do it today. Let's identify what North Star looks like and then come up with a gap analysis. You can actually throw all that away because now you can actually start with a blank slate of like, what should I do and how should I think about it? So the gap isn't really anymore about customers, what the customers want, or even what companies can actually offer. It's really what AI can do for an organization, but also structurally, is the organization ready? Right? Like organizational readiness. Because if you just add AI on top of it, the only thing you're doing is you're optimizing core processes, core systems, core data, core reactions. So the only thing you're doing is now you're inundating customers with tons of connections, interactions, and emails, and all these different things that don't have any relevance. And so I'd say as we think about that, it can't just be a layer. It's got to be the foundation that you can actually build the customer journey. And I would almost challenge ourselves that every time you do this is ask ourselves the question like, can AI do this
mm,
instead of someone else?
yeah. And it's so interesting because I'm thinking myself about we released a guide a couple of weeks ago that talked about this like rebuilding and thinking about the jobs to be done and what can you automate, what can you give to an agent, and then where do you really want to invest and have your CSM spending their time. And now I'm catching myself because I'm like, hey, we've thought about it in terms of jobs to be done. We haven't thought about it in terms of what do we want that customer to experience. And so I think it's really nice that you're getting us to think a little bit differently about how we think about this customer journey.
Yeah, I think every company that I've either got engaged or even before, everybody I think makes a mistake that like, hey, let's get in a room together, let's do a workshop, let's all discuss what our strategy should be.
Mm,
And I think you're missing an audience in that workshop. It's your customer.
yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, we can build great products. We can have great go-to-market motion. We can try to create great experiences, but it has to be grounded on what customers actually want and need.
Mm,
I've been preaching this forever, and because I always felt like that was my job is to represent the voice of our customers.
yeah.
Right. And so I think that's probably the most important thing is to start grounded, like pick a segment, pick a cohort of customers, just go ask them. Just ask them, how do you want to be sold? How do you want to be onboarded? How do you want to be
Mm,
serviced? How do you want to be supported? Not everybody, we don't determine how they want to. We have to kind of adapt and adjust to kind of how they think about and then
yeah.
make the changes. And I know it's easier to said than done. I get that. But I think it's also shifting the mindset a little bit about getting the customer sort of foundational requirements and what they need first, and then start building up on top of it. And now it's the world is just with AI, just you have unlimited capacity, unlimited things, but you also need to manage it. It
Mm,
actually can get out of control. You can actually start creating agents, and you go from 5, 10 agents to you can have hundreds of agents because you gave the organization flexibility. So there's still some structure and some governance you have to put in place to ensure that you don't actually let AI kind of get out of control either, because it could be a living, breathing animal that you got to
yeah.
take care of it. You got to feed it, got to take care of it.
So I want to hear your perspective on if it were you, where would you start? Where would you start in redesigning your journey? But we'll come back to that in a second, because you've said a couple of things that I think are really interested in, that I think folks would want to dig into a little bit more. You
Mhm.
referenced a couple of moments ago this piece around organizational readiness of AI. I know that you've been partnering with lots of companies. Have you got any ways that folks can assess that or think about how to evaluate their readiness to take on AI and build it into their journey?
That's a really good question. In many cases, it's not just building the strategy, but it's also the. I always used to use this phrase of like, I don't need to tell people what to do. I need to inspire them what to do. And I
Mm,
think a lot of it, the times we miss the little piece of like, why are we doing this? Right? Or what are we trying to accomplish? And I think the biggest difference with companies is that they got to start thinking about is leveraging AI to improve activities
mm,
versus leveraging AI to improve outcomes. And there's a big difference between that,
yeah,
right? So I can say, we want Carlos to be 50% utilized or more utilized. So we want him to do 70% more customer calls. What does that mean?
yeah,
Versus, I want him to improve renewal rates. I
yeah.
want him to improve upsell and cross sell. I want to reduce churn. I want customers to focus on reaching time to value. And so
Mm,
focus more on less on activities, which are all internal metrics, but actually leverage on outcomes that are impacting customer experience. I think that's the part of it. And I think that's the second thing I want to also reference is that at the end of the day, like, you're trying to improve customer experience, then eventually that translates into great metrics.
yeah,
It's not just activities. It's not just let's just make people more efficient. That doesn't necessarily just translate in something. It has to be, I think, a little bit grounded. So it's really about change management, organizational readiness, and leadership. Is how do we actually enable the teams to, you know, they don't have to wait for the systems, the data, everything to be perfect because it'll never will.
yeah,
I've been trying to get like data and systems and synchronization, everything for hundreds of years. It'll never happen in my lifetime and it won't happen in anybody's lifetime just because data keeps growing, systems keep growing. So stop waiting for the world to be perfect before you start embarking in this AI journey. It's 60% is good enough. Let's go. And then
yeah.
sort of trial and error, fix it as you go forward and just go with it.
Well, then this kind of brings me on to the other piece that you mentioned that was really interesting, which is AI has the capacity to get out of control. Like you could bolt it onto all these different places. You could have people sending all these different automated emails, but maybe they're not relevant to your customer. And so it's this piece around like structure and governance. Have you got examples of where you've seen that well, or any guidance for the listeners there?
Yeah, so there's two big examples. I'll start with the first one that is probably the one that is probably more mature. It's all around customer support, right? So when you think about customer support, you're trying to figure out, or at least the mandate you want to give to the companies you work with is, I say, hey, let's just eliminate first line of support. Like let's just because it's so simple, right? It's something that AI can actually do that. And it's all based on whether you have already articles or data or systems, a lot of sort of knowledge management, right? And so creating a knowledge management strategy to ensure that somebody actually owns, curates, and validates the data. Because right now, all these folks, whether it's in product, engineering, professional services, customer support, everybody has articles and documentation and data. So AI can actually help us kind of bring it all together and kind of curate it and expose it in a better way for our customers. But you also have to manage it because then people get hung up on I need to own my own documentation for this new version of the product, or I
Hmm.
need to own this because it sits in support. So one of the things we've talked about is creating kind of an AI operations within support that actually owns knowledge management, that owns the
Hmm.
content, helps curate it. They don't need to be an expert on Hook or any of the other AI startups that are companies out there. They need to just understand the discipline, the function, and kind of create some governance around managing knowledge management. And the second one that is probably needs to get better, it's just starting, is around customer success, right? Because a lot of these tools, all these great tools, give you that incredible flexibility that based on signals, I can create an agent. Based on that agent, here's the things that we can do. Based on this, like you have all of this. So it gives you that little flexibility, but you can also say, well, do you want to give a CSM that has, let's say, 20 accounts in their portfolio, the ability and the flexibility to just create 20 agents?
Right.
And if you have 100 CSMs, do you have now 20 agents per 100 CSMs? That becomes 2,000 agents, and who's managing them? And so just the ability, just like you look at utilization of people and how they're using and the impact that you typically do with humans, you want to be able to do that with your agents to ensure, are they making an impact? How many times are they being used? How many times the signals are triggering? And so having that governance around kind of, like I said before, living, breathing AI functions. So the same concept of AI operations is, as I think about it, let's say if I was a CCO, is you actually begin to create almost this center of excellence or this AI operations function that actually can monitor all of these signals so we can optimize it constantly. Because if you let it go, it's like what we had before is you have shadow IT, you have everybody downloading stuff, and it just becomes a little bit crazy. So you got to start structure some governance, but also provide flexibility.
And like what I'm hearing is it's a balance, isn't it? Because we want our team members to embrace AI, to try new things, to figure out ways of being more efficient and delivering a better experience. But at the same time, as leaders and as organizations, we want to be able to quality control that. We want to know that they are doing the right things. And if they're doing really great things, how do we make sure that everyone in the team is doing that great thing and we aren't just building things in isolation? So yeah, really, really interesting. So then let's come back to my question from before. If it were you and you were rebuilding the customer journey with everything you have access to now, AI at the core, where would you start? How would you start to think about this?
So I was thinking about this because, I know for the audience, we were looking at these questions, try to figure it out. And I think this is a really good question because it is something we're doing today. I would say there's three things that I would think about. I think number one is fix the data foundation, the metric definition, and the governance. This is not opposite to what I said. It's never going to be perfect, but you got to create the connectivity of the data from a customer's perspective. So I'll give you an example. So in the CRM, you have the data that the sales team owns. You have support that owns their data. Customer success owns their success plans, product usage. Engineering is, maybe leveraging other data. So you have this lots of data, but it's fragmented. So the customer intelligence gets lost. And who suffers is the customer.
Yeah.
I'm sure all your listeners have been on a call where you talk to somebody at an airline and they're like, I can't help you. I'm going to send you someone else. And then you have to repeat your story all over again, right? It's that piece of it. In the metric definition, you can go to an organization, you can ask them, what's your renewal rate? How do you define renewal rate percentage, for example? You might get 3 or 4 different answers. So just getting to that's just simple foundation that sometimes you take it for granted. So I think I would say number one. The second one, this one is a little controversial, but I think we need to kill this concept of static health scores and just replace it with more of a dynamic AI power lens that give you more behavioral signals. Right? Because typically, and I've done it, by the way, so it's not, no insulting anybody here, but like I've done it, right? You go into a system, you put in here's the 6 metrics I want to look at, and here's the percentage and the weighing that it has to happen. Let's adjust it by cohort. Let's do this. And we got to look at historical data. So we don't want to change it for 6 months, or maybe we have to leave it for a year.
Yeah.
It's very static and sort of very old school. You now have the ability to create a dynamic health score. They can look at all that data real time. I can go and look at external data, right? I can go to LinkedIn. My executive sponsor left. I want to know what happened because your signals internally could say green, but your executive sponsor left. The new person comes in, doesn't like you. And suddenly they churn, and then I was like, what happened? So thinking about it this way. And the third one is, you always are going to have macroeconomic conditions. You have geopolitical situations that are going on in the world. If you're servicing an industry that is getting impacted by that today, but your signals are green, everything is wonderful, and you haven't talked to the customer, well, guess what? And suddenly churn happens or they downsell. It's because you never really even know. So I think AI also can give you, that is for me, I think one of the coolest and most powerful thing is to be able to define and design a more of a dynamic health score that actually gives you the ability to create better signals. And I think the last one is, especially as you're getting started, I think, everybody wants to boil the ocean, has come up with all these great, different places and all these different things that we got to do is just identify a few moments of truth. Usually it happens at onboarding. I'm a big fan of onboarding because I think to me, that's like the honeymoon state with your customer. That's where you have to get them to understand what they do. in who we are. I think the second one is sort of during like 90 days into it, a little bit between 90 and 180 days. Where's the time to value, right?
Mm,
Is identify what does that mean? If you're in a consumption model, right? If you're in a consumption sort of base model or revenue model, figure out like, what does that look like? Is it $10,000 of revenue consumption by 90 days, or whatever that is? Just find a metric that allows you to say, we've completed an area, we've completed a specific area. And then obviously, as you get into renewals, right? You get into the renewal phase. Because otherwise, what happens is you have this static. It happens, something happens at onboarding after the sales cycle. We don't talk to the customer for 12 months, and then we want to renew with them.
yeah.
And the customer's like, I haven't even downloaded the product, and you're trying to now renew. I've been paying you for 12 months. So I think to me is like just creating kind of that frictionless moments is, I think, probably the way I would redesign it today. And it's probably what we do with a lot of our customers. I just finished a workshop this week, and that was really the conversation. The team was very excited about just completely rethinking, thinking out of the box. And I think that was probably so you can see the level of energy across the different functional teams. That I think that was super powerful.
And so it sounds like in your new world, ideal state would be very data driven, which of course we're really aligned with here at Hook. It sounds like then you're dreaming up a more adaptive customer journey. So rather than it being linear, every customer that meets this criteria, every customer that's in an enterprise segment goes through this journey, every customer that's in a digital segment goes through this journey. It's more that the journey is adaptive based on what that customer needs and how they're interacting with you and with the product. And that we're able to do that, right? Because we can use AI, automations, agents to bolster and build the foundations for CSMs to layer on top of.
Yeah, it's a lot about creating signals and kind of because otherwise in the olden days, the way you would say like, okay, we reached this stage, and then based on this, there's going to be four patterns. So it's like the decision tree. Here's the four things we can do. Either we do this, and that. Well, let's just say you take one of those journeys, one of those four sub steps, and suddenly the first interactions, the customer says, that person that you were interacting with is no longer here. That function has been moved to engineering now or sales. So you need to contact them. Suddenly the journey broke. Like, we don't know what to do. Nothing happened. It failed.
Yeah.
And so from an AI perspective is how do you actually interact with these things that the world is not perfect. So how do you interact with signals and hiccups and things that happen and give you the ability? It's not going to solve it all, but at least give you the ability to, kind of react. Actually, I would probably say more respond than react, right? Like how do you respond to the changes that are happening? And I think this goes back to the AI function, the AI operations functions. How do you actually monitor that?
Yeah.
So you can say, oh, is this something that we miss? Because you're going to miss it. There's going to be times that you miss it. So how do you evolve it? How do you monitor to make sure that it's impactful?
Yeah, great. I have one last quick question, and then we've got a couple of questions coming through the Q&A, which is great. In this new world, what's the role of a CSM? Like we've talked about building a foundation of automations, of agents and AI. What's the role of a CSM in this new world, in your opinion?
You're gonna love this because I'm gonna give you another new title. It seems like every 6 months, every year we have a new title. We used to have the CSMs and then the TAMs, and then a year ago the FDs were showing up now. So I'm gonna throw out there. I'm gonna coin it, and hopefully somebody will take it and run with it. I think the CSMs are becoming sort of the outcome architects. Right. So this old model of like just running QBRs, updating health scores, sending emails, and spending 30%, 40% of their time updating, whether it was a CRM system or a customer success platform, it's dead. It should all get absorbed by AI. And it should be. Because that was never my intent, or it was never anybody's intent to use like these super talented humans who have empathy, who are technical, who have great skills of bringing people together. Like CSMs are a special breed of folks that bring those really special skills, and really you're going to push them to just do emails and create QBRs. And so AI can surface those signals. AI can assemble QBRs. They can prompt analytics that CSMs can say, what should I do? How should I get engaged and things like that. So to me, that's the biggest thing. So I think AI can orchestrate which accounts need human engagement, right, as you define it, and when and what to adapt and at what level. If I think about the segmentation, right? So I think almost like a percentage of usage. If you're at enterprise level, you use AI more of as a co-pilot to kind of help you navigate because the relationship still needs to be human led. Sort of a Bank of America, a Vodafone, a Deutsche Bank needs a human to lead that relationship. But as you move down to, let's say, a mid market, it could be a 50-50 where AI can do more of those interactive actions with humans engaging when it's needed. As you start going down to the scale business and the tail business of your world, you just go with a very drastic, strategy of we're going to go all AI first. And it just becomes sort of more of a how do we fix it? How do we clean it? How do we get better? And so just that's how I think about the role. But it's never a CSM or AI. It should always be CSM and AI.
Yeah, love that.
All right, outcome architect. I want to hear about outcome architects going forward.
You heard it here first. We've got a couple of questions from the audience that I'm going to go through. So from Roxy, what's the smallest useful place to start? Teams can prove better customer outcomes quickly without getting stuck trying to fix every data and governance issue first. Where do you begin?
I think it's a big believer in crawl, walk, run. Like just start super slow because it's all about proving it. And there's two levels of trust that have to be built, one with your customers, but also with your teams so they can let go. Because people are, sometimes CSMs are like, we don't want to let go. This is my relationship. This is my customer. I don't want to do. So start small, right? Identify the areas and especially perhaps either through onboarding, it comes through, generating emails, creating QBR decks that you can actually send out, health checks, things like that. So just start super small and don't do it even to the entire segment. Just pick a cohort. Say, I am going to do it in the UK. All of my accounts in the UK, because you can almost like a control environment to run it, test it, prove it out, and then kind of figure out how to. Once you get it down, then roll it out. So, I mean, that concept is not new, but just start super small in the areas where they spend the most time. Do a CSM survey, ask them where they're spending the most time, and use that as a use case, right? Just like you're building a strategy for customers, if you're going to build it for your CSMs, ask them.
Great, thank you. I'm going to paraphrase the next question a little, but the gist of it is, when your platform is used to create something, time to first value is kind of hard to track and measure. So just because someone's completed an action doesn't mean they think the quality of the output it's generated is good. Have you got any suggestions there?
Yeah, so depending on how people, first of all, define what time to value is. Like everybody thinks that is like 6 months after 1 year of implementation. It's not, okay? Always think about time to value kind of in the first 90 days. I think about it as time to value as you wrap up onboarding. The second thing is when you think about onboarding, I actually divide it into two. One of them is onboarding into the brand of your company. Think about when you buy a new Apple Watch, a new iPad, a new laptop, you get onboarding into Apple. And then the experience changes to the device that you bought. And so when you think about it that way, define what time to value is. Time to value by product could actually be a feature. We used to have this at Salesforce where we would say this particular report for the sales manager was like the holy grail. That was like the sales managers loved it because it gave them enough visibility to their team, their reps. They're able to do all their forecasting. And so we made that one of the things we wanted them to do in the first 90 days is how do they actually run this stupid, silly report? But it was valuable to them. We did it at SAP. We've done it at Google. So it's find that one thing that is meaningful to them and is meaningful to you. Like find that out. It doesn't have to be the full deployment of a platform. It could just be typically in consumption, typically it's revenue. And in product, it's a feature. Work with engineering. Engineering has all this data. Product has all this data around which features use the most. Which one is the one that becomes sort of the anchor that you build on top of it? So find what that is and figure that out. We had this workshop and the team was like this one and this one. And like, okay, let's use that one as the one that you leverage to get to time to value. And then obviously the alignment with sales of like, what's the outcome expected that sales set expectations with.
Got it. I know we're at time, but there's one last question, and I'm going to ask it quickly, simply because this person has referenced your new job title in the question, so we can give it a quick answer. What are your thoughts on creating a signals-based playbook so that the approach taken by CSMs or outcome architects is at least consistent across the cohort? And I have opinion on that one too after you.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer that you can't, I mean, it's hard to have global consistency or segment consistency because every segment is different, every region is different. So I always have this 70-30 mix, 60-40 mix, whatever you want to do. You do
Mm,
need to have some level of consistency that gives you the ability to scale.
yeah,
Right. So if you're doing 70%, hey, in 70%, these are the things that matter for all of our customers, whether you're Bank of America or customers donut shop, there's things that matter to all of us. But
yeah,
there's that 30% that gives you that flexibility by segment, by region, by theater.
yeah.
Because there's language, culture, size, complexity, there's other things. But sometimes the smaller segment is harder than the enterprise segment because they don't
Mm,
have an IT department. They don't
yeah,
have dedicated people to deal with AI. And they don't even know sometimes what it is.
so
So
true.
you're
Yeah.
dealing with business. So you got to think about it that way. So there isn't like a one size fits all, but that's kind of how I think about it.
I think the only other comment I would add on there is just going back to your piece right at the start is a set playbook works really well for us to drive consistency across our teams. It's not necessarily the thing that's most impactful for the customer. And so what we're trying to do at Hook with our customers through our Play iBooks is layer in that flexibility for what that specific customer needs. So you've got a set of steps that usually you would run on a certain risk or a certain signal, great. But what is it that that specific customer needs in the moment based on how they've interacted with you before and what's worked, etc. So yes, build for consistency, but allow for customer flexibility as well for what they need.
It's a great
Carlos,
point.
you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your experience with us. Thank you to everyone for joining and for listening in. We will send the recording and a couple of bits and pieces of content as part of the follow-up. And please look out for the next monthly sync in June. Much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great
Thanks,
day, everybody.
Carlos. Bye,
Bye bye.
everyone.